questions. So the first question comes from Upcomer. How do you think playing from the hotel impacts your performance?
Definitely wasn't an ideal situation for us, considering we only had 4 out of the 5 players in the hotel room, and it just wasn't at all the same as the stage, where I feel like we get a lot more hype. We have a lot more impact as players, I feel like, when it matters most on stage, and it's not using it as an excuse, but it was definitely different.
All right. Thank you. Next question comes from Sports Kita. After a really close match against X10, how would you describe the quality of SCA teams at Valorant Champions, and how do they compare with NA?
I mean, definitely a huge step up from some of the NA teams we played. I couldn't say all of them. I would say their preparation, as far as like their innovation in the game with Breach and sometimes KO and sometimes like just different agents that we're not used to playing in North America. I think there's a lot more innovation in these other regions that NA lacks a little bit, but I feel like firepower, it's pretty much similar.
Thank you. If there are questions from the room, we will open it up. If you have a question, please use the Zoom hand raise feature and I will call on you. All right, first question from Upcomer.
Hey, FNS. Sorry about the loss. I did want to ask you again a follow-up about the hotel room. I know Victor told me with the match yesterday that he was in a room that was like 30 degrees and he couldn't close the windows. So it was really affected his play. Do you know if that was it impacting him this game too?
No. This time everything was fixed. Riot did a really good job today of making sure that he was completely warm. Everything was good. And obviously he was still isolated away from the rest of us, but yeah.
Thank you.
Next question from The Click.
Hey, FNS, commiserations for the loss against X10. I want to jump ahead to Haven. Your team was up 9-3 with plenty of momentum to close it out, but then X10 made that comeback, which extended it to overtime and then that eventual win. And so what happened within the team during that latter stretch?
We definitely feel like we should have won a couple of the rounds to close out the game that we didn't win on that last map, obviously. We rarely get those 9-3 halves on defense side, so we were very confident going to the attack side, even when we did lose the pistol. But the big blow, I think, was the bonus 1 versus at 9-6. That was a very key round for them to win, where I was in A-Link, and we had a crossfire with a player in Heaven and a player in A-Site. We had full advantage, but I wasn't aware that there was a guy flanking me at B, so eventually Vic was in a 1v1 and ended up losing it, or 2v1, and he ended up losing it, which he easily could have gone either way. He played it perfectly. Just unfortunate that I wasn't looking behind me. And then they gained a lot of momentum off that. Had a lot of money going forward, had a lot of ults, and they took full advantage.
Thank you. Next question from One Tap Valorant.
Yes. Hey man, first of all, I'm sorry for the loss. And my question is, Vanity from Cloud9 mentioned this in the press conference earlier, that it's difficult to read teams from different regions because you don't have scrim experience with them. Do you agree with that statement, and why?
100% I agree, because their comps are a little bit different from teams you do scrim against consistently. So when you scrim against a comp, for example, we very rarely scrim against a comp that has Breach in it on Haven, right? So definitely different to deal with. But again, they had demos, they had matches that we could watch. So we definitely did our prep work, and, most of it was correct since they had just played Haven yesterday, I think. So it definitely impacts you in a sense that you don't have that much practice against it. But if you prep against it and have certain counters that'll work, then it's all right.
Yeah, but obviously in game it's different rather to just demos and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely weirder to experience it, and you kind of have to adapt on the fly a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Next question from Jinx Esports.
Hello. Also, sorry for the loss. I want to know, what are your thoughts
That's okay.
around the evolution of the North American team's performance? As well, we know Sentinels were on the top. You were to the finals, and now both teams are out, and only Cloud9 is left.
Answer that question. It definitely sucks to be out of the tournament. Obviously, like I said, Sentinel should have won. We should have won. We should have been able to close those games out. But it just goes to show that a lot of these regions have a lot of firepower and a lot of good strategy. And, today it wasn't our day. So it's good in the sense that the game is growing and evolving, but it just sucks that it wasn't our day today.
Thank you.
Next question from Upcomer.
Wanted to ask just, I know it's tough to consider this and the loss is so fresh, but do you play any what ifs in your mind, after what happened with Victor with the positive test and having to play with Hotel? Do you have any what ifs about how the tournament could have gone differently?
Absolutely. I mean, it's really hard not to when you're at a high level. You always think, you worked at what if you had. It definitely crosses your mind, as does for other players as well. But you just look past that when you're playing the matches. It sucks, but there's not much you can really do about it.
Thank you. Next question from One Tap Valorant.
X10, they have been seeded against Gambit in the quarterfinals. Now that you have faced X10, what do you think their chances are against Gambit realistically?
It depends, because if they play like they did today and, they adapt really well, because obviously X10 showed a lot versus us, showed a lot versus everyone in the group basically. And so everything that's in the book has now, in my opinion, been shown already. So I feel like Gambit's going to take full advantage of that. Also, Gambit's main ban is Haven, and therefore, they won't be able to play it. X10 won't be able to play it, and I feel like that's one of their stronger maps. So I feel like Gambit will definitely win that veto, and just depends on who's having a better day. I think.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Next question from Upcomer.
Well, I can ask one more. Just to follow up to the last question there. Well, I know you got the news about Victor's positive test pretty soon after finishing the first, set of quarantining, after arriving in Berlin. Did that shake you guys at all? Did it impact you guys at all when you got that news?
On day one, yes. When we first found out, it was a really shitty day for everybody, but we obviously had to talk as a roster and said, we're a pretty resilient team for the most part. We've been together a long time, and we just kind of dealt with it as it came. We kind of understood and accepted the fact that we weren't going to be able to play on stage this event, and just kind of ran with it. I don't think it affected us in game as much as people might look into it. I think it was our own mistakes inside the game that cost us these matches, more so than Vic's positive COVID test. But yeah, I mean, it definitely impacted us for the first couple of days.
Thank you. Next question from The Click.
Well, with NB's elimination, all hopes from NA will now go to Cloud9, a team that reshuffled its roster right before the start of the NA LCQ, which has thus reached the top 8. And so what are your expectations for Cloud9? Do you think they can have the potential to go all the way and win the whole thing?
If Leaf and Zeppa continue their form, I definitely think they can potentially at least make a run to the finals. They're a pretty strong team. Even going into this tournament, I kind of felt like Cloud9 was the better team out of a lot of them, compared to Sentinels. Just in terms of just their overall structure, it just felt like Cloud9 felt more prepared every single time we'd scrim them, So definitely looked good, and I'm glad for them that it showed in the matches versus Vision Strikers and stuff like that. As I said, I feel like Sentinels and ourselves, we just didn't look like the teams we actually are. And Cloud9 did, so they deserve it. I think they'll make a good run, though.
Thank you. Final question from One Tap Valorant.
Now that the year is over for you, and with Christmas and New Year's coming up, I know this is a bit early to ask, but what's in store for you and your teammates in 2022? You think what's the future like?
We're just going to start the year off, hopefully just on the right note, obviously. It's going to take a while for us to swallow this loss, but like you said, we have a ton of time. I'm probably going to spend Christmas with family, friends, and, have a little bit of a vacation, kind of take our minds off of the game for a bit. And then when we reconvene, just kind of have conversations, rewatch our games, make sure that going to the next year, we fix the things that went wrong this year.
Yeah, and I wish you good luck with that as well.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. That wraps our scrim for today. Thank you so much, FNS, for joining us and for your time. Thank you, everyone here as well. We will be back with the next scrum shortly.